You know, here in New England, I tend to think a lot of people live in their kitchen more than they live in their living room. Everything happens when you walk into an old Maine farmhouse. You talk with people and you sit down at their kitchen table, right? And so I really believe in that. And I really like it when a table is right next to the window, especially in the kitchen. And so this yellow is sort of a metaphor for that light that comes through and activates that space and makes it a home space, shelters and defines, but doesn't limit or confine. And that's really fundamental to the way I think about space and about my work. You know, I guess some people argue that either art chooses you or you choose art. And I feel like I'm in the former. Art sort of chose me. It was the only thing I was good at in high school, which I barely graduated from. And I have to make it to a certain extent. If I go for too long without making it, it starts to get a little bit uncomfortable. And that's what I love about cardboard. You can work so quickly and so intuitively. With wood, you've got to be way more safety conscious, and so it takes a little bit longer, and there's a little bit too much time to think, in some respects. Every one of these pieces that's on a wall has a crib work behind it of wood, so it's more stable. Architecture is still the driving force behind it. If we look at just this corner, it is just that, it's a dead corner. So if we open it up, even just a little bit, even if we were looking at like this being a ceiling and this being a wall, even if we made just a 4-inch gap there, right? All of a sudden, we have light, right? And the space is no longer trapped. So there's the first condition, the second condition, and the third condition. So you'll see a lot of that in my work because I really believe in it. I think architecture is about what's going on the inside for a very specific intended purpose. And then I'll stay on that thread for a moment. Some real intentional spatial relationships which play off of each other, and really intentional light qualities. And they should all sort of, I feel like the building should sort of develop on its own in response to what's happening on the inside. In other words, if you were thinking about a table where you wanted people to come together, what kind of light do you want? What kind of space? What kind of shape? High, low, view, no view, connection outdoors or not, right? So you start to build that structure to define the space. Structure defines space. The quality of the structure defines the quality of the space. And so we're designing from the inside out, but what you see largely is designing from the outside in. And that's an important distinction. Now, to be fair, there has to be a little bit of both, of course, right? But a lot of people are really worried about what the outside of the building looks like. But I argue, if you design for the inside, the outside of the building will take care of itself. So going back to these, this was really about what was going on the inside as opposed to the outside. Art is very object dominant. I'm not real big on objects. I'm more interested in space. I'm more interested in the space that's defined by structure. It's not the end of the world if my work doesn't get shown. I'm okay with dumpstering it if I have to. I'll go work at a hardware store, Hannaford again, if that's what it takes. But I find that my work gets better if I let the thinking happen first and then just sort of get out of the way of the thinking, let my hands do the work. Let my hands do the thinking. And I can learn from my hands in the process and actually do a lot. And my work changes in the process of working by learning from my hands. And what I see has happened. I mean, I think we all work that way to a certain extent. What I'm thinking about here is, I guess we could call it home. And hearth is always so central to the home, not only because they needed the warmth, but they also, they gathered around the hearth, like we've always gathered around fire. But I did start to think about, what could a very small space be like? It basically alludes to space to sleep, and it connects to the hearth, which is important. But here, this is more sculptural, okay? So it's an abstraction. I can't tell you how many times I've moved in the last 10 years. I don't know, 15 or 20 times. So I'm beginning to wonder if some of this is in response to, I really would like to have that home where I can always return, that I know I'm going to be at for the rest of my life. That'd be great. But it's not going to happen for a long time. So I think these are also sort of a search for that in some abstract way. So I went to paramedic school. I ended up doing that, as I told you. I left the fire department and I did paramedic from full-time from 1988 until essentially 2011. I began to learn the art world in the good sense and the bad sense. But I also had the privilege of learning from a lot of other people I was working with, also going to school. I got in here for the 6 months. And they are certainly very much supporting the arts in Maine with the space and the income, and so I'm a introvert, kind of painfully introverted. I have hermit-like tendencies, but I'm trying awfully hard to learn to, I hate to say play the game, but that's sort of what it is. So, not to be completely disrespectful of it, because there's some very intelligent, kind, good people in those worlds, right? I don't want to completely say that it's otherwise, because it isn't. But then even to be an artist, to a certain extent, is kind of a privileged place, right? I often think about those people that are, you take a guy who's hanging drywall and then mudding it 5 or 6 days a week. I can begin to understand some of their frustrations with the elitism, as they might call it, right? And so I guess I'll cycle right around to say that my work today is constantly trying to find its way between the two ends of the continuum. You've got modernism, but then on the other end of the continuum, you've got the human scale of handmade. So I'm working my way between those two ends. I'm a sucker for both. But yet we know at this point that where modernism has taken us, frankly, is aesthetically quite wonderful if we don't look at the holes in the ground from all the excavation for the lime, for the concrete, and we don't look at the fossil fuels involved in all the trucking and all these other factors, right? And global warming and on and on and on, right? I have to stay true to just exploring and working in a more experiential manner, asking more questions than making pretty finished pieces. There's a place for both, but in a 6-month residency, it's probably the only opportunity I'll have to really just sort of explore and work in a more intuitive manner. Probably not a whole lot of what's gone in here is very solvable. And I'm okay with that, as long as I don't look at my bills, and so it's all good.